get back at change orders every time we get guilty.
So are we back at it?
Yep, ready to go.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as I was talking about, designating and de-designating requires a comprehensive countywide analysis. That's just the Washington Administrative Code, that's what it says. And you don't have that with these proposals. And it also says site-specific proposals to de-designate natural resource lands, they must be deferred until the comprehensive countywide analysis is conducted. And a lot of times those will happen when we do the periodic update, which is once every 10 years. That's a required update. Every jurisdiction has to do it. The annual updates are optional. You can do those if you want. But the periodic update, that's a heavy lift. You can't do that every year, and you really need a lot of that information to make some of these bigger decisions. So along with that, the GMA states that counties are required to establish procedures for amending natural resource lands. So in those procedures, they're going to talk how do you do it, what kind of soils are involved, all the criteria that's on the ground for you to make a determination, should it be ag lands of long-term significance or not. So in that Franklin County has adopted that criteria and those procedures. And what Franklin County has adopted is consistent with, pretty much consistent with state law. And I'll just read this part here. It says, de-designation may only be used during a county or area-wide process and not on a parcel-by-parcel basis. And that cites right back to the WAC. The county should consider requests for de-designation only in connection with urban growth area expansion requests and during the periodic updates of the comprehensive plan. So that's out of your own plan, which reflects the state law. So that's just kind of a nutshell. I just wanted to give you the main points here. And in the letter, we go into a lot more detail. What I might suggest considering on these properties, if you don't decide not to recommend approval, is that site looks like it would be perhaps a very good candidate to be in the urban growth area. If it's in the urban growth area, there's going to be a lot more options for the property owner. If it's not in the urban growth area, you can't run that sewer line into it. That's a very specific state law requirement. They would have no sewer, so they would just have to rely on septic tanks and drain fields. Yeah, so you would have a lot more options if it were in the urban growth area and a lot more development potential. And
But we're not gonna make the decisions for the landowner. We have to just take what he brought us and make the decision.
right.
We're not gonna tell him what to do.
Right. I'm just saying that's an option
I understand.
that could be considered, you know, if this doesn't work out for the applicants. Because it does look like Clark Road would make a good distinct boundary. And you've got the infrastructure right next to the site. So that's just something to consider. But the proposal, both of the proposals as they are, have inconsistencies and would violate the Growth Management Act. So that's why we are recommending denial of both of these proposals. So that's just some of the highlights in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions if you have any more questions.
Any questions? No questions? Any more testimony against or neutral? No.
No, we can't include them too yet.
No.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
I just wanted to explain something. We're not asking for an expansion of the Lambert.
I
We're,
understand. that,
okay,
yes.
we're just asking for a
Understand.
rezone.
Exactly. Mhm. Any more against or neutral comments? Okay, is there any call-in public testimony at all?
No.
Any email public testimony at all?
No.
Does staff have any final comments?
No.
Is there any clarification of public statements needed by anyone from the audience? The public testimony portion of the public hearing for CPA 2022-1 is closed. Is there any discussion amongst the planning commission prior to entertaining a motion?
Should we listen to the other one first before we make a motion, or?
Oh, really?
Yeah, let's,
It's pretty much the same thing.
because remember,
Okay, no, that's
your,
fine.
your recommendation is on the docket as a collective. So we've seen the presentation, you've heard the comments.
So we're not making a motion on each individual one of the two, we're making it on the docket.
You will make it on the docket. You will determine at that time which
That makes sense, Mike?
ones
Yep.
you want to include.
Because these are kind of the same thing.
Gotcha, okay. So, ready? Item 1B. Seeks to change the comprehensive plan land use designation of approximately 44.58 acres from land from agricultural to rural shoreline development. The land is bound to the west by rural shoreline development Lamred and Fraser Road, to the east by a 9-lot rural residential 5 Lamred, to the north by Columbia River Road, and to the south by agricultural production AP 20 zone properties with an agricultural comprehensive plan land use designation. I declare the public hearing for CPA 2022-02 open at 8:16. May we have staff present the staff report.
Thank you, Chair. CPA 2022-02 is requested to change comprehensive plan land use designation from approximately 44.58 acres of land from agricultural to rural shoreline development. The property is a designated agricultural land of long-term commercial significance. Parcel number is 124190232. The property is bounded by the rural shoreline development Lambert to the west with active farming operations. Active farming operations to the south, a rural remote Lambert to the east, and active farm activities to the north. Properties to the north and south have a land use designation of agricultural zone AP 20, rural shoreline development to the west, with RC1 zoning and rural remote zoned RR5 to the east. So this is the general vicinity of the property. That I believe right there would be Burns. Oh no, that might even be, no, that's Clark. That line right there is lines up with Clark. Then, so here's the actual property. And this is the RR5 Lammerd. This is the rural shoreline development Lammerd. And then that's the subject property. I apologize for the orientation of the writing. It's just the way, this is north-south this way. So irrigation ponds, those are crops.
What are the blue tags on the side? What's that?
This
say?
is rural, this is the rural shoreline development Lammerd.
Okay.
This over here is the RR5 Lammerd. This is a ag property. These are the site photos. This also went out for notification on July 20th. Agencies were notified, planning, neighbors within 1 mile were notified, public notice was in the Franklin County Graphic on July 20th. Sign was posted on the property on July 21st. Commerce was notified. That 60-day review process ended on September 25th. Staff reviewed the checklist and issued a determination of non-significance on July 20th, 2023, and that was published on the same date. And then it was filed with the Department of Ecology under SEPA number 202-303-411 in the SEPA registry. Comments were due by August 3rd, and no SEPA-specific comments or appeals were received. A lot of this we already kind of went into, so I'm going to go fast through it because a lot of these issues are the same issues that staff had with the initial, or the 01. So RCW 3670A establishes the Lammerts. Columbia River West area is a type 1 Lammert with a rural shoreline development comprehensive plan land use designation, meaning effectively the expectation of the county is that whole area in that Lammert will eventually develop as residential land, or residential uses, I should say. That's the intent of the comp plan. We already went over the 4 conditions that counties need to address when establishing governing LOBs. Staff's analysis interprets the code to read that it would appear to meet condition A due in part that if approval, it would negate the agricultural land comprehensive plan land use designation of a parcel located in between. And in effect, there would not be 2 Lammerts, it would just become one really big Lammert, is one way to look at it. So that one's kind of one of those, depending on how you look at it, situations for number A, or letter A. So there's potentially an argument to be made for better preserving the character of existing Lammerts, or neighborhoods and communities within those Lammerts, due to the potential decrease in conflict between residential and agricultural activities. However, there are some issues due to the fact that this is a designated land this is an agricultural land of long-term commercial significance. It is designated as such. It's not one of the ones in question. It's actually mapped and designated as such in the comprehensive plan. So that runs into the issue, and that's why Mr. Davenport went into the fact that there's a specific process you have to follow in order to de-designate property. And that's why that's one of the primary issues staff has. You have the de-designation issue as well as the expansion or modification of the LOB for 2 Lammerts. There would no longer be an agricultural bridge through there, where, it would arc across and separate those sections. So we have WAC 365-190-050-1, and then WAC 265-190-040-10B2. And this is the whole intention to maintain agricultural lands or other resource lands. So we have that, goal or mandate. It's not a mandate because it says should, but we're supposed to be working towards that. And then in our comp plan, we state that we should consider requests for de-designated only in connection with the open growth area expansion and during periodic updates. As Mr. Davenport pointed out, we have to go through a full-blown lands analysis. It's a very substantial cost to the county. In fact, actually, the state assists us with that funding for us to
Say that again.
Say that part again, please.
say which part again.
We haven't done that. We haven't done a countywide what?
Land use analysis.
Okay.
We do the countywide land use analysis at the time of our annual, or our 10-year updates,
Okay.
because it costs a lot of money and a lot of resources. So that's when we do those. And then I said the state also provides us with funding. It costs so much that the state actually provides us with funding to assist us in.
So when
getting
was the
those
last
things.
time we did the 10-year thing?
In the 2018 update.
Huh?
In the 2018 update.
Okay. And that's become final, the 2018 one? That's
That's our current comp plan.
And that's done and over, it's in place.
Yes, it was adopted in 2021. And then that was appealed, and that's what created the delay on getting these things moving sooner. And then with the whole Franklin Crops, that court battle's been going on for over 2 years. Or coming up on 2 years, something like that. Because unfortunately, we can't make them move any faster than they want to. So this is our comprehensive plan designated land, soils map, and that's the property right there. A lot of our stuff is actually down to the crop circle, depending on the properties and stuff like that, like right there, that's a circle. And those are all, everywhere you see the red, it's an agri-resource land, prime irrigated land. So there are 4 properties, including the property in question located between the 2 Lammers that carry both an agriculture comp plan land and are designated as alt tax. So one of the things mentioned is that perhaps this was an oversight on the part of the county, and that we didn't mean to designate it that way. However, due to the fact that it's surrounded by other designated lands, that's why that's brought up, is that in the application they did present this as an oversight, and it wasn't. It was designated as land because it was prime soils in an active farm situation. And it's got that designation on it. Columbia River West Lammer was originally created and was initially included as being a part of the city of Pasco's urban growth area, but in '95, but then in 2008 they petitioned to have it removed. So, and that Lammer's boundaries is the Pasco UGA to the south, the Columbia River to the west, Dent Road and Fraser Road to the south, Columbia Irrigation Canal right-of-way along the east, and Sagemore Road to the north. It also kind of hugs that, as you can see here, that's a section line, then it moves in. So that's what it was following, the section line, and then it shifts over and then terminates here, terminates at Dent Road. Because the city's, and then where you see the hash, that's all the city, anywhere where you see the hash. So that's where their boundary now is. This is still part of the county down in here.
That's considered a Lambert down there on the bottom part that you were just pointing at?
I believe it is, but it's not that Lambert. This stuff, a lot of this development down in here and right up between had developed prior to the Growth Management Act and actually had been platted.
Right, but it was after 1995, right?
I would have to check.
That's like Kohler Road and all that down there, right?
Down there.
Yeah, what is
Oh,
it?
that's the other Lambert. There's 2 Lamberts
You mean
over
like
there.
McDonald
They're
Road down
stacked. Yeah, this is McDonald is, there's Terrace Drive. And then, this area down here, I can't remember what the Lammer did, but it's developed. It's got the, Spencer's is down, farther down, and, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on there's other subdivisions down there. So residential development for the most part, there's gaps, but it's pretty consistent along the shoreline going
Where
down
on
there.
this map is the subject parcels?
Right here. Right in that area. We went through the whole Lammerd. I can go over this again if you want me to, or we can move on. So the intent for this reason, or this change, is to allow for more residential development. When we looked and we ran an analysis, basically that shoreline development area we showed you, 83% of that is still vacant. So there's not a high pressing need for additional land. If this were to have been flipped to where, we're like running out of area to develop and things like that, staff's position may have been different. But we have other issues associated with it. So it's not just whether or not this property would make a good residential property. It's at this current time, staff's not satisfied that we would need additional acreage at this moment. 2 years from now, maybe. 5 years from now, maybe, but not today. There's also the de-designation issue, the fact that this is a designated land, and we have to go through significant review and things to determine whether or not this should be de-designated, and we don't do parcel by parcel de-designations. It has to be done on a countywide basis. So, and that 83-17% thing, that's a rough, an ugly number. It doesn't take into account things like, I don't want to subdivide my property. So you got some big lots, or, terrain or things like that. But it doesn't change the fact that that's kind of what we're looking at the moment. So this is this is the map that was referenced earlier, showing kind of the analysis. There's a lot going on there, but the long and short is that shows the calculations for each parcel to show that in your packet you can see how we came to that analysis of an 83% vacancy. Now this starts getting into in the other application, we covered the transportation element. This also has, there are no real plans for changing. At this point, we don't have a tip that includes improvements to the road system up there in that area or anything else to potentially accommodate something like that. And it doesn't show up in any of the plans. So, there was an engineer's report by Public Works that was created back in 2015 to create a north-south route by expanding Fraser Road from Dent Road to Columbia River Road, utilizing the section line Eastern Rural Shoreline Development Boundary. Expansion of the roadway is piecemeal depending on the creation of new developments triggering road build-out. This is occurring currently. Fraser Road is being converted, north of the 90 at Dent. I don't know, I can't remember if they did the south part yet, but that whole alignment running straight up, that north-south alignment of, as developments are being, and subdivisions have been approved, they are building that out, that Fraser Road alignment. So it is progressing north, but it's down towards, in fact, I think you're gonna see that
It's
Fraser
still
Road
dead
is in
end
the
at
next subdivision, isn't it?
Columbia River Road though, right? Fraser, still dead end.
There's still a
Columbia
gap.
River Road.
There's still a gap And so, yeah, you have Fraser Road that picks up there and dead ends or on Columbia, but there's a gap between that and this extension that's currently occurring from the south. So that's still there, and that will get filled in as the River Shore area or other developments occur to fill that in. Or the county gets a bunch of money and decides to put it in, or some fantasy like that. So that's coming along. So whereas the other one failed on one, this one, in our interpretation, fails on pretty much all four of the conditions. It's expanded an LOB, it's seeking de-designation. There would be a nub, which is not in compliance with the clearly demarcated physical boundary, you know, like a road or something like that. All of a sudden it goes whoop, whoop, whoop. You know, and the purpose, as stated by the applicant, is to expand for development of single-family roads at a rural standard. And it would effectively, like as we said, it's an expansion of an Lambert LOB. Whether it's an expansion of the shoreline development, because that's the designation they're seeking, or on the other side is an RR5. Now, it would not be necessarily, you would think, oh, well, that one's RR5. But Lamberts have different zones, can have different zoning in them. It's not, however, the RR5 property was created through records of survey, and that one was created more with the intention of maintaining the conformity. Because when the rules changed and you had less than 20-acre lots, then you had non-conforming lots. Well, that just creates all sorts of problems for landowners that have these 5-acre segs. Because, so by creating that Lambert, that locks that in place. They maintain, they're conforming. They don't have to get a letter every time they try to refinance or something saying, yes, we know it's there, and all this other stuff. Whereas the development for shoreline residential development, that is more of a, you know, that's some of the prime real estate for residential, and that's why that was designated, because you got shorelines. It's logical that you're going to want some nice houses along the shoreline. But that zone doesn't allow for commercial generally. There's limited commercial activity, but that all requires a conditional use permit. So, as stated in our interpretation, this does violate all four of the conditions. Following agencies provided comment: Franklin County Public Works, Washington State Department of Commerce, and Franklin County Planning and Building. There were also 2 public comments in opposition to the proposal. And our suggested finding of fact is that it is not in accord with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. The effect of the proposal on the immediate vicinity will be material detrimental to land uses. In fact, in some ways, for the same argument that we heard on the Olberding, if this were to approve, what happens to those crop circles that are adjoining it? Now all of a sudden they've got residential development on, you know, and or they're split. What's their access issues going to be? You know, that's a pretty minor issue that can be generally worked out. But the, you know, the fact that now you're creating a bridge of residential, and now you have these crop circles, how's that going to impact those crop circles and those farmers that want a desire to keep farmer? That's a double-edged sword. It depends on which side of that equation. If you're interested in residential, then you want this. But if you're interested in maintaining farmers and protecting farmers, then this could be a problem. But
how do you solve it?
how do you solve it?
Yeah, if you're a farmer, you can't, I mean, like they mentioned, how are you gonna crop dust when you're crop dusting over top of a bunch of 5-acre lots?
Those properties have been there for 30 years.
But there's houses right next there.
I haven't heard a problem about it. I'm just saying, So now we're gonna add more houses.
Well, they don't put spraying,
So-
it's because there's some houses out there.
These are not simple issues. There's pros and cons. And to any of these decisions, no matter which way you go with it. However, again, from staff's perspective, in our interpretation of the law, this does not meet those requirements because of the de-designation issue, the expansion of logical outer boundaries. We have an obligation to enforce the state and the county's laws, so that's what we make our recommendation.
Are we in the question section yet, or are you still presenting?
I'm still presenting. I'm almost
Let's
done.
finish that
Yep.
up, and then we'll go to questions.
It's basically the same things. It's not consistent. It's not physically suitable for the allowed uses. And it will not, does not advance public health, safety, or welfare. In fact, it creates potentially more conflict. So, and now I'm done.
Now you're done. Okay, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Am I hearing this right? This property does have the ag super designation.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we here if we can't even do it? Why is this property here? I thought
I was
that's what you did.
presented-
You weeded those out.
Okay, just like I said it on the last
The
application.
last one doesn't have that designation on the land. That gives it one more.
This is not the same thing. This is a policy decision. Staff does not have the authority to stop a person's due process rights because I don't necessarily agree with or think it. This is different than a quasi judicial item where it's like subdivisions or a standard zone change, things like that are a matter of, I look at the application, I look at the law, it meets all the things, I move it forward.
But that's exactly what you're saying, that this
No.
land cannot be used for this, and it's still being
Staff's
brought to us.
interpretation, because they have a due process right, it went to the board directed me to move it forward. That is why we're here.
Get pissed. We're
I'm
just
sorry.
asking questions.
I
But I
know,
mean,
but I've
what-
answered that question 3 times.
Yeah, but we're not the legal system here.
Just
We-
wanna
we're
understand
giving
exactly
us-
what
you're
we're
giving us
making
these situations
a
that seem
recommendation to.
impossible. You know, that we have to redesignate land. You can't put it on this land, but you're bringing it to us. If the board did that, they're cowards then. Why didn't they turn it down?
You would have to ask the board.
I will ask them.
Okay.
I will ask them.
Because the applicant desires it to continue to move forward.
And I don't blame
But
him.
the way
I
it's
don't blame
Presented
him.
is
Yeah, we're in no man's land.
We are telling you what we recommend based on our analysis. You have been provided with the comments and the record. It is your jobs to make the decision that you want to move forward and what your recommendation is.
Well, it's not really no man's land because these guys are developing a huge piece of land that we've already approved right next to it.
And again, we, the commission, we embody the recommendation. We do not approve anything. So we can make our recommendation based on the information that we have with the information we have, right?
We
We're not
are
gonna-
the sounding board of the public. I know what my public wants. My public wants cheaper houses, and when you guys make the recommendations that there's plenty of housing, there's plenty of lots, that's great. But the higher the supply is, the lower the price goes. And that's what people need to build houses, is more land and more places to build them. I understand the urban sprawl thing, but this is weird. This is weird, and these two properties are not the same. One has a designation that just, you are saying, cuts it out right away because it's a land of whatever farm, and the other one isn't. It's in a court battle, but as of now, it is not. So are we gonna have 2 votes on that, 2 amendments? 2 motions, or 1 motion? 1 for both of them?
Yeah.
I thought you said we could do one or the other.
On the same docket.
You can have the motion that the planning commission desires to have. Staff makes a recommendation. It's all we do.
But 2 separate things, or do they both go as one?
You are
One
voting
and
on the
two.
2023 comprehensive plan docket. What it consists of is what your recommendation will be. So, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Maybe it'll,
I didn't
I'm
wanna
hoping maybe you'll
interrupt.
ask a question that I'm not apparently
But
explaining
I
this
think the
right.
confusion lies in that we're considering this as a 2023 docket as a whole. And we're actually doing, aren't we, you can correct me if I'm wrong, a public hearing considering each application recommendation separately on their own merits. And so when we make a motion, I guess I don't understand why there would just take one motion to actually address two separate applications.
The motion would be as follows. Something like this. I move that the 2023 docket represent or consist of this, that, nothing, whatever you guys recommend, based on the record and the comments that you have received.
That's not what the motions say on our sheet.
They're listed each separately.
Yeah, they're each separate. and they
For
don't
each
have anything to do with the
application.
docket. They
but-
just, their normal recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's where the confusion really
Okay.
is that it doesn't really, look like a docket to us,
No.
the way it's
I
being
do
presented.
apologize that that happened that way, because there's different ways that you guys can do what you want to do.
But we
So-
don't know that because we're not professionals. We don't understand that. We usually come in here, vote on this or that, and it's done. We don't know this process.
I realize that, and I thought that it had been articulated.
It hasn't
what the
been.
process is.
Can we approve one and deny the other?
Yes, I said that at the beginning of the meeting.
Right.
But it would take just
So
one
what does
motion
that do with the
to
docket?
do that?
So you would say, the 2023 docket, the planning commission recommends A is included in the docket and B is not. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it. If you're choosing to deny a specific application or approve a specific application, that's what those suggested motions were for. But
And you
the
keep talking about approval, Derek, just, it's a recommendation.
recommendation of approval or a recommendation of denial. So, I mean,
Any more questions for staff?
I'm sorry this is not
No, you don't have to
straightforward,
apologize. You don't have to
simple
apologize.
stuff.
We are gonna
It's-
ask questions because we don't understand it. That's all we're doing.
Yep.
There's nothing to apologize for. Okay, any more questions of staff? Does the applicant or applicant's representative wish to speak?
Good evening, Commission members. My name is Mark Fickus. I'm a senior partner in the Halverson Northwest Law Firm. I've been doing land use work for 35 years, and I hope I can answer some questions. I think, Derek is making things way too complicated. We're simply here on a required public participation element when amending a comp plan. It's in the statute. You guys, the statute allows annual amendments. Your county code allows annual amendments. It's in Franklin County Code 1470. If you guys wanted to, when you go home and you're bored tonight, go look at it. It's real simple. I was here 3 months ago. I was here at that hearing that before the commissioners. Derek didn't want to process these applications. And I believe, with all due respect, he's doing his job and he has a perspective, and he was wrong and overruled by the board. I was here. By the way, I'm here on behalf of Diamondback Farms and the Underwood family. I'm being paid to be here tonight to speak for them. In Franklin County Code 1470, it's simple. There's no vote on a docket. The docket is a procedural. All the statute requires is that all the comp plan amendments, annual comp plan amendments, be heard at the same time. That's being done. You have two. They're both here tonight. There's no vote. There's no vote on a docket. Each application is separately. Your both the statute and your code allow property owners, like Fred Olberding and the Underwood family, to bring a petition to amend the comp plan from an agricultural designation to a rural one. That's all that's happening. Derek's overcomplicating it. You're sitting here, by the way, I want to fix another procedural thing. The county is acting in its legislative capacity. This is not a quasi-judicial property. I go to Commission Member Didier. You did not have to recuse yourself, although I appreciate you doing that. In a legislative matter, appearance of fairness requirements do not apply. Your procedure that you were reading at the beginning does not apply to this. And it's right there in the beginning of your county code. This is just a strict policy legislative matter where you are the public petition component. You're supposed to gather public comments and then make a recommendation to the county commissioners. And they have the ability in their sound discretion to amend the comprehensive plan. I'm going to get into that. It is frustrating to me to be, I would appreciate, I understand your frustration to be told that we can't do it is just wrong, okay? You can amend the comp plan annually. And by the way, even the Department of Commerce, Mr. Davenport, I appreciate him coming all the way from Spokane, but his role, that's a little unusual to see them participate in a very small comp plan amendment of small agricultural designations in a rural county. But his opinion also is advisory only. He doesn't have an ability to appeal. The commissioners can and should approve both of these, frankly, and I'm here to go through, and Rick Simon's going to go through why the Underwood property has some unique characteristics about it. If you took what Derek and Mr. Davenport said to its ultimate conclusion, the county can never have any property designated for residential housing. Nothing they said is wrong, it's just they've viewed it in isolation to prevent sprawl and prevent de-designation. Yes, I will admit, the Underwood property is designated lands of long-term commercial significance, agricultural lands of long-term commercial significance. When Seattle attorneys and West Side politicians invent stuff, they invent stupid, acronyms that nobody can understand. By the way, a land use, a residential subdivision, property that can be built on with smaller lots for houses. That's all it is. And I agree with Mr. Dockstetter that talked earlier. Neither of these applications is asking to expand a lanyard. They're simply asking for a designation that allows future residential development. Derek, could you put that aerial photograph of the Underwood property up so I can... Underwood? Yeah, the Underwood one, so I can make reference to it. And by the way, this is an unusual situation. I understand perfectly what a lanyard is. I don't need to be told what the law is, and I don't think you guys do either. And they can be amended. Lanyards can be amended. It's not favored in the law, but the property's right here. This is an unusual situation, and I think it could have been a mistake in the application for the Underwoods. This is already going to be residentially developed. In fact, there's development pending here, and some of the Underwood family actually owns that property, and it's sandwiched between existing residential development. This is just an isolated small 45-acre piece that's squished between two residential developments that are going to occur and are occurring. This is why you have an annual review process. It's to make technical corrections to your comp plan map based on substantial changes in circumstances. And even the WAC that Mr. Davenport cites allows modifications based on changes in the character of the property and based to correct a mistake. This property is not going to be able to be farmed by the Underwoods, and they know how to farm. They've done it for years. And they've utilized the process that's before them today. And again, your commissioners have already made a finding. We don't need to talk that there have been the two criteria for putting this thing on the docket tonight. So we're all here and grumpy, and I'm getting a little hangry because I missed my dinner, so I apologize. But it's whether there have been substantial changes to the area of proposed amendments since the last adoption, are amendment of the comprehensive plan. Your commissioners, yes, they made Derek put it on the docket. He didn't want to, and he had some reasons that he was just overruled, and the commissioners said there have been changes that warrant this consideration. They're asking you to go through this public participation process tonight, and then whether assumptions inherent in the comprehensive plan remain valid. Again, Mr. Simon's going to speak briefly after me, and you know, this is all in the application materials, and there's a lot of written materials. I understand what it's like to be on a lay board, but I would appreciate if you had the opportunity to review the application. It goes into this, but the assumptions have changed. We think that that was potentially a mistake. If we were amending the logical outer boundary of a land area, which we can do under the 4 criteria that Derek's outlined, the logical outer boundary should be, in this area, should be Columbia River Road. This is already built out. That's getting built as we speak. And we don't have to wait 10 years. That's why you have annual amendments. I will agree there are some inconsistent language in the WACs and cited both by Mr. Davenport and Derek, but it's not in the statute. I think it's allowed. It can't be the answer that this county can never change its comp plan except for agriculturally designated lands except every 10 years. That's wrong. I've done it all the time in other counties. I have represented clients doing that. Now, by the way, I'm not going to say that that can't get appealed by environmental groups from Seattle like FutureWise that seem to think that, you know, housing outside the city of Pasco is bad. But that's for them to decide. They're not here tonight. There's no, who's here opposing it? Nobody. You know, maybe, well, all right, I apologize, and everybody here is willing to, has an opportunity to speak, but these properties are both why you have annual amendments. They're simple, small, as a percentage, it's in the application, and I may be botching numbers, I was told there'd be no math today, but these properties together represent less than 0.5% of all the agriculturally designated land in the county. You guys are a large rural county with tons of agricultural land. These are 2 small parcels near Pasco's urban growth area. The Oberlin application was actually touching it. This one's not very far away, and there's residential development occurring. And under the housing goals, the flexible, affordable housing is also a goal. You never hear Derek or Mr. Davenport talk about the housing goals. They're just as important in the growth management goals, which is a really hard thing to understand because they're general policies and not specifics. Long story short, I'll end because there's a lot of ground to cover, but you know, again, what staff and West Side politicians call sprawl, it's just growth in housing that's needed. And I believe, I've never had this argument that you can't only change the designation of agricultural lands of long-term commercial significance every 10 years with $1 million study funded by the Department of Commerce. That's just not true. And again, if it is, you should leave it to somebody else to appeal it. What we'd asked is that you that you do not follow staff's recommendation on this one, who usually does a really good job. Derek and Aaron and I usually agree with a lot of what they say. On this one, they're wrong. More important, it's the commissioner's decision, and you're here listening to the testimony. You know these people. You can look at the property and use common sense. It doesn't have to be checked in at the door. These are properties that should be designated for future residential development because it's going to be impossible to farm extremely close. And I think there's nothing in the law that prohibits that. I wish you guys had legal representation with a county prosecuting attorney here, but I know she doesn't usually attend these meetings. But this would have been a good one to do some homework on. So I'm happy to answer any questions. This is the one time we get to speak to create a record, although it really doesn't matter. But this is just, your job is to gather public comments, consider the staff report, consider the law, and make a recommendation. And again, we think these meet all the criteria. There's 6 general approval criteria that Rick went through that he'll quickly summarize, including, that there will be a need for extra housing and lots outside the urban growth area in the county. I don't think everybody in Franklin County has to live in the city of Pasco urban growth area and commute to their farms. So I'm sort of flabbergasted like you at the procedural issues we've been dealing with tonight, which usually don't get dealt with. So you do have to consider each separately. You can make a separate motion. I think, frankly, both of these should be approved, recommended for approval. But here on behalf of Diamondback Farms and the Underwoods, we think this property the designation should change. And it's not going to mean it's going to residentially develop tomorrow. There's all kinds of other development issues. The property will probably have to get rezoned. There's infrastructure issues, but you can, you can see that it's going to be developed and it's not suitable for farming anymore. So unless you have any questions, I'll let Rick talk and hopefully we can all finish this. I know this is a difficult process, and by the way, even attorneys can disagree on the application of these regulations and statutes. Any questions for me? Is it a land use council? All right, thank you.
Additional comment in favor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Again, for the record, my name is Rick Simon, speaking on behalf of the Underwoods. And much of the comments I made in talking about Mr. Olberding's property are also applicable to this site. Again, the change in circumstances or the circumstance that makes continued agricultural use of this property, it's squeezed on both sides by residential development. And that makes farming impractical. It is well suited for rural residential development in terms of the county road that adjoins it, in terms of its general proximity to the Pasco urban growth area and other services, schools, fire stations, and so forth. And it helps to implement the county's housing policies. And Mr. Chairman, you stated emphatically that you increase the supply of lots, you decrease the cost of housing, and that is true. And I would suggest that is right now, given the circumstances that we have in the Tri-Cities, that's a higher priority than preserving 44 acres of agricultural land. Just to put some numbers on it, taking this 44 acres out of agricultural land designation represents 1/10% of the county's ag land base, but it represents a 2.8% increase in the rural residential housing acreage. So again, the shortfall that's part of the county's plan that talks about how many rural residential lots are needed in the next 20 years shows a 1,200 unit shortfall for this area, and this helps address that need. One final thing I want to point out is we've heard a lot about LAMRIDs and how they can't be expanded, and that's generally true, but there's even language on page 41 of the plan that says generally expansions of LAMRIDs and their associated logical outer boundaries is not permitted in GMA, but in rare cases it may be appropriate. I'd suggest that in the 2 cases that you have before you tonight, that is appropriate. So that concludes my comments, unless any of the commissioners have questions for me.
I have a question. Is it your opinion that this particular location for this application is what would normally be termed a location where affordable housing would be located?
I wouldn't suggest that this is necessarily affordable housing, but I think just in general, you increase the supply of housing, you decrease the price. I wouldn't say that this is like the ideal place for affordable housing. Although
Thank you.
There isn't any affordable housing anymore.
Because there's no supply.
Any more comments in favor? Neutral or against?
Cynthia Muse here again, and I live very near this property, pass by it every day. What is not being pointed out is that this piece of property is north of Self Landing Road. And hey, people, we have to, at some point in life, draw a line in the sand here. Where are we going to start to limit all this urban growth as we march northward on all these roads? We've got Dent and the newest one we just talked about. That's where the new division line is, and now we move it up to Fanning, and then we move it up to Self Landing, and start talking about that being where maybe the Earth's growth boundaries will be in the future. Are you kidding me? That's really getting a far out with a whole lot of land in between that could be developed before we start intensely developing that. It's in an area where there's beautiful small farms and hobby acreages, and there's some large farms. There's people that, like Alexander's and Kurt Bayer, who would probably like to farm for the rest of their lives and their children's lives out in that area, and need the right to and freedom to farm without close, dense residential areas all around them. Don't they have that right? How about all the agricultural traffic that comes from Douglas Fruit and Bejo Seeds, which is right up the road from this? Maybe Bejo doesn't want this developed into residential property either. And I'm not understanding your idea of residential development when it's all very cozy acreages around there. I don't know what your idea is, but I can't imagine any of those people wanting that kind of development near their properties because they enjoy that rural way of life out there. And we are north of Self Landing Road when you're talking about that parcel. And yeah, there will be development along the river, but we'll have to fight that battle later. And part of the problem is that this engineering team here is the one that proposed the PUD developments on gobbledygook and gerrymandering and fuzzy math on coming up with how you develop a land parcel to get more density out of it. And our SOS group, which has two very good lawyers on our staff, or in our organization, Save Our Shorelines, are very much against this kind of development also. So don't be intimidated by lawyers, because we also are a volunteer group that have good lawyers representing us too. So thank you. Be very aware of where we need to draw the line northward as this marches on. I'd hate to see it be all the way up to Sagemore Road, because most of our farm property is right south of there, and I know you'll know, as I fight for the rest of my life for free and open space and beautiful conservancies and conservation easements and that kind of thing, that we don't want this kind of development coming out our way, and we want people to stop trying to advocate it for people in rural areas that don't want it. What part of rural do you not understand? Thank you.
need to direct
Oh,
comment
yes.
to the Planning Commission, not
I quote to them, what part of rural do they not understand? Thank you.
Thank you. Any more testimony against or neutral? Any call-in public testimony?
No.
Any email public testimony?
No.
Does staff have any final comments?
Nope.
Is there any clarification of public statements needed? Public testimony portion of public hearing CPA 2022-2 is closed. Is there any discussion amongst Planning Commission prior to entertaining a motion on one or either of these issues?
I have a procedural question.
Okay,
It has to do with the first application that we did not. And
Yeah, I don't disagree with Mr. Pike. This is convoluted. And I guess what I'm trying to, a big part of for me, is I'm trying not to, because I believe that I'm supposed to present you with facts and minimize these folks are here to convince you one way or the other, based on my analysis. So I apologize if I overcomplicated things. Because I'm trying to not influence your decision except for with my interpretation of the facts. I don't, my opinion, those types of things. I'm trying not to get any of that out there. So, so.
Let me say something while
Go
you're
ahead.
saying that. I've been here for 3, whatever you are, and I consider Derek one of the most pro-development of the 3. I don't have that much experience, but I do not take him as negative. I've been heated today, but it's for other issues. So understand that, Derek. Okay.
Yeah, so there are different approaches that you can take regarding your actions. It's exactly how Mr. Fickus, is it Fickus? Is it Fickus? Fickus. Thank you. Mr. Fickus stated, you can't, I've seen it, I've done it. That's how we did it in Airway Heights, was a single docket, the way I described it. You can also choose to split it and take action on each one, and then I'll put it together for the So I just need, so your question though is, we didn't make a recommendation. You're having a concern now that we have one item that you've recused yourself from. And then if we make a single motion, you have a concern that
But,
that's,
yeah,
or are you trying to unrecuse?
Can she
She
come
did
back to
not
first
need to
item?
She did not need to be recused, maybe?
not,
Yeah,
not technically,
okay.
No, you did not.
not
So-
technically.
I tried to
because this is
explain
a
that
legislative
before, but,
action. Comp plan amendments are legislative.
yeah.
They are not quasi judicial.
No,
So,
they're
the
policy
reason
things.
That I did that though is because I wanted to make sure that there was no slight appearance of
Mm-hmm.
violating that fairness because of our personal and business relationship with Mr. Oberlin. So I wanted to
Right.
make that clear.
And whereas their knowledge or existence didn't, your concern is primarily the business aspect?
It
Because
is-
everybody seems to know everybody in this county. I mean, we can't get away from that aspect.
They do, but it was mostly in the aspect of not inadvertently causing the county taxpayers to be responsible for any sort of litigation that might arise from saying, oh, well, you
Yep.
know this person and, you have a personal and business relationship with this person, the applicant, and so on and so forth. That was my primary reason for doing so.
Right, but these are legislative actions, yeah, so, I mean, and I appreciate that, but at the same time, you don't, look, you guys all have your own individual rights, you can do and make the decisions, you see commissioners, the Board of County Commissioners do it all the time, I abstain.
And procedurally, I would have preferred, that we
Acted on each one.
applications separately because we did the public hearing for each separately, which
Well, is that the way
that's
to
where
s-
my confusion is this doesn't appear to be a docket to me. This is a public hearing for
Each
each
individual.
application.
So
to
can we
a
make two
recommendation.
different proposals? You can vote on one and the other one you can't vote
The
on?
docket portion should have started with the planning commission, where we sent to the commissioners, when the docket was first come before us, to say, this is our recommendation to either accept, deny, or defer. for another
It's
year.
going the
I
opposite.
don't.
Rather than backwards?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's so backwards to me that I'm just.
But you have to understand, I have to follow my process. And that's what the process said I had to do.
So now that we're here.
I had
we're
never heard of that process that way
Still in
either.
discussion,
So, we're still
but I
here.
don't want anybody to be afraid to make a motion that we're gonna have to probably correct. So let's just get the intent out there and we will refine it. Okay?
So is the best way to handle this is to make a motion on one and make a motion on the other? That way you've recused yourself from one, she
I
hasn't
think
on
she's
the other.
back in.
Are you back in?
I've been discussing, I mean, since it's been lumped
Yeah.
together, I've been
I
discussing it.
still like,
So,
Nobody objected to your
Do we wanna do
participation.
two,
Well,
or do we
then
wanna
again,
do
you're
one?
accused, but.
One would be the easiest
That's
if we
what
can do it, as long as
managed?
she's not put in.
I don't think so. You're okay with it, right?
if a commissioner believes that they can come up with one motion to address both applications, I'm fine with that.
I would, in all honesty, I don't normally correct myself like this, but I concur with Mr. Fickus on this.
Do it
I
as
think
two.
you should do two individual motions, which staff will then put together as the docket.
Let's-
That will be presented to the board.
Okay, we
So-
have number 2 most current in our mind right now. I will entertain a motion for that right now. And then we will proceed to 1.
Okay.
So the chair will entertain a motion
On two.
on 2, please.
I don't know how it's supposed to be stated, but I'll,
Remember the
I'm
whole
gonna wing it, and you fill in the blanks.
There we go.
bingo.
All right, I make a motion to move on to the county commissioners, a motion of approval for CPA 2022-02, SEPA 2022-15.
Without findings of fact, we don't have to do that.
Just approving it and let them hash it out.
Now, you have to have findings of fact.
Why? Why?
Why?
We don't know them.
Why?
We don't know it. We don't do it. It'll
Haven't
just,
had the last 5 years
Yeah.
to study this.
It will be challenged if we do not submit.
it's gonna be challenged anyway.
Then how do we do the findings of facts here before 2
Yeah.
o'clock in the morning?
Okay,
Yeah, no.
this is how you do
That's
them.
that's what I was worried.
So you're looking for approval,
Yes.
Yeah.
and you're looking to put together an approval recommendation.
I'd like to not wing it. It'd be nice if we can actually know what we're talking about and
But
be
we
able to
don't.
make the recommendation right.
But we
Well,
We don't.
We kind of do,
So-
but there's conflicting interpretations of laws and codes and different designations and all this other stuff. And so how are we supposed to absorb that?
If
in
you're
one night?
seeking,
Right.
so the findings of fact, hold on. Now I gotta, because all we have is the summary on this. On the, I
And-
need
and
to
my-
get the
And
actual.
my main reason for approval on this is I think it was an oversight on the designation when we did the whole thing. This is an amendment to that. Make an amendment.
Second, I got it. Okay, so we're on, all right, so keep that there.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. And do the same findings of
No,
facts
you
apply to
have to,
both?
do
the same,
this is just what we have to do sometimes. I mean, we're not always gonna get it right, or my recommendation or interpretation may not mesh with yours, and when that happens, we have to articulate and do the right thing, you know, and
I'm
get
probably
it the
picking
way.
the hard way to do this, but I think this is a hard subject and it needs,
It is. This is not a simple thing. So when you look in your staff report on page so 16 of 186 is, let me make sure that, yeah, that's the right one. So what we have here are the suggested findings of fact. Ours are generally in the negative, as you've seen. So, first thing, suggested findings of fact, the proposal would become is that your intention
Yeah,
for the suggested findings of fact?
yeah.
Okay. So, it is. So how is it? How is it in
What it
accord?
comes down to is all in definitions. I mean, it's,
And it's the planning commission's interpretation or recommendation based on the things that they've heard. So, one, if you're looking for an approval, you would go to the record that they presented, the things that they've said. And if you agree with those, then you would cite those. So, I mean, I don't know. You say to approve it. Why do you want to approve it? Why do you think it, why are you suggesting for approval? What are the what makes you think this should be approved?
It shows continuity in the county. It shows proper boundaries.
I think it was an oversight when it was designated. Columbia River Road is the obvious boundary. From there to the river is the growth of Pasco.
And it's already there.
We've created urban sprawl 30 times in the last 20 years. I mean, urban sprawl is, I guess to me, it's not a concern. Because there's no more ground in town.
Is there a right and a wrong finding of fact?
Can I cite laws and WACs and all this other stuff?
No.
We go by common sense.
But, and whoever said that, thank you, because that's a good point behind me. See, this is why it's so imperative for you to read the packets. Because we don't know what aspects or elements out of that packet they agree with or don't.
You have to cite them individually.
We have to actually cite them and say, so what you see on this is just the summary. The staff report itself is significantly more information than what we present on the PowerPoint.
To your point,
We have to counter,
we get this much paper
yeah, I
a
know.
week before. I'm a small business owner. I don't have time to read this, and even if I did, I don't understand half of it.
No, I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. How am I supposed to inform you of the
I'm not
information?
blaming it on you, but
Yeah,
I'm just addressing your comment.
But that's where the information is.
May I make a comment
Yeah.
as to that? I understand your frustration totally, because even working closely with a lot of these issues, it is coming up with findings and conclusions is difficult. And so I know we definitely all have a desire to see resolution for both of these applications, because it's been a long, it sounds like, a really hard journey to get here. And, but in the interest of doing things right, I propose that we do a workshop and have that precede a decision-making for the comp plan docket for these items, where planning staff helps the planning commission come up with findings and conclusions in order to approve, if that is the collective
Is
desire.
that possible?
Are you saying that you're asking that planning staff assist the planning commission in finding a way to approve these in the findings of fact?
Yes, and when I say help, we would do our own homework as far as going through the codes for,
I won't.
in between,
I won't.
or try to.
I'm not gonna
It's
try to figure out the
difficult,
whole legal
do
system for
that.
this if we can't get help with this.
or at least have an idea of what we want to do, which you already have, and then the planning staff would formulate a suggested list of findings and conclusions for us to be able to
To present
approve.
to the board.
Yes. Our recommendation, which is
Can we-
a recommendation.
He's got his hand up back
Well,
there.
hold it, Derek. Can we take public questions or comments now?
we're in the process here.
So yes?
Um,
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, I just helping you go through these findings, I put together, as I prepared these applications, some detailed findings. If, as you look at this Underwood application, you look beginning on page 145 of your packet, you can go through there. There's items bolded there that I think would maybe help you develop your findings.
mhm.
Yeah.
I don't either. I don't have 145
No.
pages.
145 of 186. It's on the,
It's 145 of
You're on the top.
186.
Yeah, but mine doesn't have that. I go to 76 of 80. Mine only goes to 80.
So,
I stole my paper copy from that one right there.
The one that got mailed only has 80 pages.
So we didn't even get the,
That's the first one.
My whole packet only has 80 pages. 2 of 80.
Yeah,
Well, where's one or where's
it should be in there.
great suggestion.
Well,
54 of 80? They all say of 80.
when we set out that, we included that, because that was originally set for September. So that one wasn't sent out with this latest, and I stated that in the email.
Okay.
So what I sent out was just the extra comments that we
Continue it to
Okay.
a set date of the subdivision.
Can't do it tonight.
No, there's no way. No way. And our planning staff came up with,
county's ass.
came up with, and we went over it at the workshop.
So, back to what Melinda said, is that possible to do?
I can work with you right now to try to develop the,
We're gonna be here until 2 o'clock in the morning. There's
or
two,
we can table the action or a recommendation to a later date.
I mean, is it any good general findings of facts, or is there 2 in the whole world that we have to find that are correct? That's the part I don't understand.
Remember, you're supposed to be voting with what you want to do. So, as they suggested, they've got all their supporting information in there. Yes, I could,
right, but you have supporting information for a denial. They have supporting information for approval. How are we supposed to sift through it in
And
one
we're just-
evening?
We're
no,
just
no,
gonna
no,
take all
no.
their positives.
No,
is
what
we're
I'm,
gonna
what
do.
I'm saying is you can table the decision, we can schedule another meeting, have you guys have some time to look through things and figure out what it is that you guys want to recommend. You're probably going to find the things that you're looking for in the application that the applicant submitted because it supports their position. So if that's what you support, then that's what we will forward. But if you want to do it at a later date, we have to table this item and move on to the next so that we can get those things worked out. Or we have to stay and do it tonight. Those are the options.
You would have to continue the meeting to a date specific and time specific
Or
order-
send out notice.
in
Yep,
order
but
to do
yeah,
that. And you don't have to renotice.
If we say the date certain
Yes,
tonight.
right.
One more comment, excuse me, this is done all the time, this is a little unusual, I know Derek had a recommendation for denial, and you guys can't draft findings of that.
I know, that's what I'm
But what's done all the time is you can recommend approval, the record's closed, and you could request Derek to prepare findings consistent with your decision to approve it. He's got all the information he needs. Now, the only requirement, there's no more public hearing, the record's closed, but you will have to adopt the findings at the next planning commission meeting. It's done all the time, and this is why on legislative matters, usually there are findings for approval and denial, but, you know, Derek, it takes a lot of work doing what he did on this application, so I appreciate it, but I think you can recommend approval. Your decisions are made, and just ask Derek to prepare findings consistent with your approval. There are only 6, and they're right, there's not a half a page in 1470-110. There's 6 criteria. All you have to do is basically take everything Derek did and do the opposite. And it's in the application. The application goes through how the findings, but
And this, go ahead,
you
I'm sorry.
meet monthly, right? The planning commission meets
Yes.
monthly.
Yeah,
Turn
so
that into a motion.
this is, remember, my role.
Still have a motion on the table.
It's just what he said. If you want to go for a positive, I agree with him. That's what I'm saying. We have to either go through it tonight or table the final vote or what
No,
he
he said we
said.
can, we can,
What
we
he
can pass
said,
the
the
vote.
adoption of the findings of
But we
fact
can
at a
also
later
put the
date.
burden of coming up with the finding of facts on the staff.
Yes.
That's my job.
So at this point
But
then,
if I don't know what you want,
We want an approval.
you want an approval, I haven't heard the commission vote on that.
Yeah, I think we're
There
going
we-
in the right direction with
Okay,
this.
so how do you state that motion? Recommend a positive recommendation with
Based on,
findings of facts that
That
will
will be-
be what?
That the staff will
tabled until
come up
future
with,
day.
that will
We're
support.
not tabling it, are we? We're just passing it and the facts will be
We're,
added
we're,
later?
we're gonna have to hear it again or approve
No.
it on the next meeting.
yeah,
You approve the adoption of the findings of fact at the next meeting. What you would do is a motion recommending approval
right,
and directing staff to develop appropriate findings of fact to support that position.
Say so moved.
So moved, there you go.
you have to, you have a motion already.
Yeah.
Too bad I didn't write that
So
down.
you have to.
I'll need the meeting minutes.
Did he make a motion?
I didn't.
Yeah,
I-
he made
I
a
would-
motion to approve.
So I will withdraw my previous motion of approval and
So,
make a motion.
make it so on what you said.
all right, so the motion would be, the Planning Commission hereby recommends to the Board of County Commissioners the approval
Oh,
of
so
both
it's
of these, or,
recommendation.
oh, no, we're only doing one,
Doing
all right,
one.
yeah. Of CPA 2022-02, because that's the one we're operating on right now. And direct staff to develop findings of fact to support this recommendation,
Will be voted on at the next.
which will be voted on, and we will review and adopt those findings of fact at our next meeting.
Right.
So what'll happen at that time is I'll have them written out, and then they'll either meet muster, or you may want to tweak them or something like that, but we'll get that figured out at the meeting.
Before you get into this too far, somewhere in here, I can't restate it the way you did, so I'm just gonna say so moved. So,
That's fine.
does that work?
And a
Okay.
second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the motion that was read by, it's been moved by Commissioner Lowe and seconded by Commissioner Vincent. Is there any discussion? No. May we have a roll call vote?
Mike Corrales,
Yes.
Melinda Didier,
Yes.
Mike Vincent,
Yes,
Layden Lowe,
Yes.
Manny Gutierrez.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion has been approved.
Very well. Now we will move on to item number 1, and I will entertain a motion the same way.
This is on you.
So,
I can read it. I think it's,
Go.
the planning commission hereby approves to move and direct staff to find findings of fact that will be voted upon on the next planning commission meeting.
We should state the
hold on, can I make a stab at it?
CUP.
Yeah.
The Planning Commission hereby recommends to the Board of County Commissioners the approval of CPA 2022-01 and directs staff to produce findings of fact to support this recommendation, which will be adopted at our next regularly scheduled meeting.
I thought that's what I said.
Well done. I second.
Second. It has been moved by Commissioner Gutierrez, the motion as read, and seconded by Commissioner Lowe. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote?
Mike Rallis.
Yes.
Melinda Didier.
Yes.
Mike Vincent.
Yes.
Layden Lowe.
Yes.
Manny Gutierrez.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion has been approved.
Very well. Well done.
That was easy.
We want to talk about anything else or go?
We still got this one. We got a subdivision.
Discussion regarding the change of planning commission meetings?
Oh, voting for a different time.
Uh-huh. Is that it?
We still have the subdivision to discuss.
We do? Oh, gosh, I skipped one, sorry. Okay, item number 2 is a public hearing for subdivision SUB 2023-1, SEPA 2023-1. Is a proposal to allow for the development of single-family residential subdivision comprising one parcel totaling approximately 34.9 acres and creating 25 minimum 1 acre size lots. The area where the project is proposed has a current zoning designation of rural community 1, RC1, and has an underlying comprehensive plan, land use designation of rural shoreline development. I declare the public hearing for SUB 2023-1, SEPA 2023-1 to be open at 9:35.
Thank you, Chair.
Staff present the staff report.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Chair. This is subdivision called Plateau River Ridge. It's parcel number 124-300-375. West of Fraser Road, north of Fanning Road, south of Alta Lane, south and east of South Landing Road, and east of the Columbia River. Comp plan designation of rural shoreline development. Current zoning is rural community 1, RC1, and the size of the property is approximately 36.31 acres. The applicant is seeking to divide one parcel into 25 single-family homes or residential lots, averaging an acre. The developer is proposing that the new residential parcel be provided with domestic water from a nearby Group A public water system. This will also provide a means of fire suppression across the entire subdivision. All proposed lots are to be irrigated by a private system. This is the project site. Oh, I apparently hit the clicker. So that's right there. This is John Mullen Drive, I think, is through there.
John Mullen Trail.
Trail, yeah. And then there's this going across here. Those are, I don't know if they're actually in like fully, but the routes have been cut. They've been graded at least. Yeah. This is the draft layout of the proposal site. I don't know if you can tell, but these over here are not part of this, if that makes any sense. These are, that's why they're a little hard to see, and you see this defining line like this. So that's the, I think, well, I know who lives there, but I'm not going to go into that. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's these 4 lots we created through a short plat at an earlier date. This is the rest of the property. This is a view of the site. On August 31st, 2023, staff sent notices to technical agencies, property owners within 1 mile of Franklin County Graphic, and made a SEPA optional determination of non-significance on, and that was listed as in the SEPA registry as 202-304-131. And on the, you sure you posted that on July 21st?
The sign was posted for the Richview Water System, which is adjacent to this
Oh,
proposed
okay.
subdivision.
Okay. The staff did not receive any public comments during the comment period. Comments were received from the following agencies: the Assessor's Office, Public Works, E911 addressing, Washington Department of Archaeological and Historic Preservation, Fire, Fish and Wildlife, Ecology, and the Colville Confederated Tribes. The applicant is required by the Department of Ecology, this is SEPA mitigations, to apply for construction stormwater general permit. It's pretty standard. They've become a little bit more, is it Ecology who's beefed up their, oh no, it's DHP that did, never mind. Beefed up their comments. Best management practices is to minimize dust. Professional archaeological survey is required before construction can begin. It's based on the comments received by the DAHP and the Colville Confederated Tribe and the proximity to the river. Upon full build-out of the Group A water system and the installation of operational fire hydrants which meet fire flow requirements, the development may follow setbacks. However, if they choose to start building before that system is approved, then they will have to meet the standard non-fire extinguisher or fire hydrant setbacks of 504 or 8.40. In other words, they'll have to, instead of being able to build at a 10-foot side setback, they'll have to be at 20, these types of things. Drainage systems have to be designed to capture and dispose stormwater runoff on site. Source of irrigation water shall be implemented and provided during the life of the project. If no outside irrigation service is available, then the lots will be required to obtain potable water from an exempt well, and therefore a note shall be placed on the plat stating that no more than 1/2 acre of land shall be irrigated from each exempt residential well. So that's going to be a condition on the plat, just to clarify and make sure everybody understands that that's the circumstance if for some reason they're not connected to that Class A water system. Franklin County staff does recommend a positive recommendation. And we recommend the following findings of fact. Adequate provisions have been made for the public health, safety, and general welfare, and for the open spaces, drainage ways, roads, alleys, or other public ways, water supply, sanitary waste. Proposed subdivision does contribute to the orderly development and land use patterns in the area and assures for safe walking conditions for students. Well, we don't really have that. We don't have pedestrian. Where did that come from?
That was language in the new subdivision code.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we don't install, but we do ensure that there are safe routes. It's part of the design layout. The public use and interest will be served by permitting the proposed subdivision. The proposed subdivision does conform to the general purposes of any applicable policies or plans which have been adopted by the board. It does conform to the comprehensive plan and zoning requirements and does conform to the general purposes of this chapter, Title 16 subdivisions. The application was received by the Plateau at River Ranch preliminary long plat on July 17th, and it was deemed complete by staff on July 17th. The SEPA process has been completed. Following an open record pre-decision hearing on a proposed preliminary plat, Planning Commission shall render a recommendation to the board. Review criteria for Franklin County Code 16.20070 is used to develop the findings of fact, in addition to the standard language for a preliminary long plat. The applicant shall comply with the comments provided by the following agencies: Benton Franklin Health District, Franklin County Public Works, Franklin County Planning and Building, and the Washington Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. Those conditions and stuff are in your packets. So, and yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. If there are any questions.
No questions? Okay. Does the app, go ahead.
This is the plat that we approved that water system?
Can you,
This is the plat that goes with that water system that we approved?
the
for our
siting
last
of the
meeting?
towers? It's one of them.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
That may hook into that, yeah.
That-
It is intended
For
that will be approved and they will be able to hook into that. And they are proposing 1 acre lots. So, at this time, yeah. That was what the plat showed, was 1 acre lots.
And there's some, it looked like on one of your site plan drawings that there's some significant slope there. Is that,
The site's it's
it's been graded?
yeah, it goes, and then it goes, yeah.
Oh, so those were those other lots that showed more of the
I'll show you.
ones that you,
Topography.
No, so,
elevations.
I don't know who did the grading out there, but they were good. They got really tight lines through there. There was no spillage except for like really minor that I even saw go over the edge. But yeah, that drops pretty significantly right at that
Okay.
point.
And how close will the actual
They're outside of the,
residences?
I would have to. Okay, hold on.
It's well beyond the what is it, 200
They're not in the
feet from the highway?
SMP area.
Okay.
So I can't remember the slope depth. I can't read this either, but it's well, yeah, it's very steep. And I just can't remember the exact distance to the back of the property. The key thing is just like all the shoreline properties, nothing within 200 feet of the shoreline except for under limited circumstances with the proper approvals.
As part of this plat, are some mitigation measures for, any like retaining two walls, or is any of that needed for?
That would occur at the time of
required?
the specific site build because it depends on what they're building. So you don't want to go throw in a retaining wall that's designed for
Right.
type A house and then you end up putting in type B and now you got to throw that out. So you do all that at the same
So
time.
that will be addressed at
Time of
time of
build.
building permit?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions of staff? Applicant's representative?
Good evening, Planning Commission. Caleb Stromstead, Octare Engineering, representing the applicant. So we're in favor of this and in agreement with the staff report's findings and recommended conclusions or conditions with one exception. Suggested condition approval number 1 states comply with the requirements of the Benton Franklin Health District letter dated June 28th, 2023. We're working with the health district. We have some lots that have some unique situations. And so we would just add a comma to that as our request, to that statement that says, and or any conditional waiver approved by Benton Franklin Health District, just so we have the flexibility. Typically the way this goes, the county doesn't care, it's the health district's business, right? And so what we work out with the health district, as long as they have to sign the plat, so the plat's not gonna get recorded. We just wanted that flexibility in the language. If somebody else came in and got really technical with it, we just wanted to, dot our I's and cross our T's. So I don't have it written down, but I'll say it one more time. So after condition 1, just extend that sentence and say, and or any conditional waiver approved by the health district. Just so we have flexibility. Is that, any questions on that? So, other than that, it's a pretty straightforward plat. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there's anything comes up. like Derek said in the staff report, it is conditional based on this Group A water system that the conditional use permit was applied, so it's going to be served by a Group A public water system, and lots will be served by for sewage with a septic system. So thanks for hanging in there tonight.
Thank you for hanging in there.
Is there any in-person public testimony for the project? Any testimony against the project or neutral?
Cynthia Muse here. Yes, we pass by this property on a regular basis also on our way to Fraser, the new Fraser Road that's going to go all the way through, which will be nice. The only concern that I think it's very well done so far, the Mullins are wonderful people. They do right by agriculture. The only concerns we have are for those ravines. One to the very south of that project, it's already developed into lots, is very steep and a very substantial ravine. And we're trying to work with Fish and Wildlife and Department of Ecology, Corps of Engineer, everybody that our group SOS can possibly work with to keep those ravines as critical habitat and save those ravines for their intended purpose, to drain, for drainage purposes and for wildlife corridors and for enjoyment of people to access the river. And I think that, I've talked to Randy, and I think that they'll begin to honor that as the future goes on. The only other one was one of the ravines that they filled in, a smaller one up on, let's see where, well, one of the smaller ones where the ravine, when we had the thaw, in January, and it cut right through where they had leveled right to the ridge and made a huge washed out self-landing road down to the ferry dock, and it cost the county a lot of time and money to repair the damage of that. And that ravine should have really not been filled in for a residential lot without some other kind of structural measures there. That was really a dangerous thing to do. That's the only thing that I can think of besides the major ravine that's been untouched. So we're trying to protect those ravines. Mullins are wonderful people to work with. I have no problem with this. The county did a good job of trying to repair, as Randy did, the land, the lot that got washed out. But that's always, ravines are there for a reason. Over thousands of years, they've been points of pressure release for sudden thaws and things for that water to escape down to the river. And really, everybody should be very, very cautious about ever building near those, because they serve a purpose. And then you've got FEMA issues and all other kinds of stuff when you allow people to build residential where nature has shown us you shouldn't have those kinds of structures. Thank you. Good night.
Any more public testimony? No. Any call-in? No. Any email? No. Does staff have any final comments?
Well, I'm going to tell you a story. No, I'm just kidding.
Somebody throw something.
About 2 stories.
186 pages.
Please.
No, I have no more
Can you start in about 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Is there any clarification of public statements needed by anyone from the audience? Public testimony portion of public hearing, SUV 2023-1, SEPA 2023-01010. Is that right?
Yeah, SEPA 2023-10.
10, okay, is closed. Is there any discussion amongst the planning commission prior to entering a motion? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Do you have it written out, Derek, how the motion should go?
Yeah, I don't
We're on a
think this
roll.
one's quite as controversial.
Jeez, you guys are all full of it, aren't you? Somebody read it then.
You want to do it?
No, no, quick.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
There needs to be a,
Okay, so let me, something here.
Amending that one condition.
Amending, yeah.
That's, yeah,
First
that's what
condition.
that's what I'm doing right now. I'll do it on the screen. So, Commission of the six findings of fact, 4 conclusions of law, and 10 conditions. And as
Got a typo back there. There you go. You got it.
oh, yeah, this thing's got red lines, it tells me.
Okay. All right, can we move forward now? Yeah, all right. I move that Franklin County Planning Commission recommend that the Board of County Commissioners adopt the 6 findings of fact, the 4 conclusions of law, and 10 conditions of approval, amending condition number 1 to read as written, plus and/or any additional waiver approved by the Health District as detailed in the staff report, and approve case file sub 2023-01- SEPA, SEPA 2023-10.
It has been moved by Commissioner Gutierrez, seconded by Commissioner Didier, that we approve the approves SUB 2023-1, SEPA 2023-10, with the 6 findings of fact, the 4 conclusions of law, and 10 conditions of approval, amending condition 1 to read as written, plus and/or any conditional waiver approved by the Health District as detailed in the staff report, and approve case file SUB 2023-01, SEPA 2023-10. Is there any discussion? None. May we have a roll call vote?
Mike Corrales,
Yes.
Melinda Didier,
Yes.
Mike Vincent,
Yes?
Layden Lowe,
Yes.
Manny Gutierrez.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion has been approved.
Okay. Are we gonna do this other business?
I don't know, you're the one who wanted to change the meeting time.
Do anything or just talk about it?
We can hold this off until next meeting, or you guys can, as a group,
Do we have
collect.
to do anything or just vote on
Well,
it?
we have to know,
If we
so,
want to do it?
right, so that we can amend our stuff. You also have to, there's a process where you have to amend your bylaws, because your bylaws actually state the time.
Okay.
But we can
So-
initiate that process.
Yeah.
So,
all
for
in favor of
next-
changing that.
Well, I was gonna say, we can do it that way, or we'll just bring it for an agenda item next month. We don't have a whole bunch of weird things next month, do we? Okay.
You'll bring it all prepared and we just pass it?
To some degree, yeah. I'll have some stuff, I'll bring it in, I'll bring in the bylaws, we'll go over it, we'll discuss it, and then you guys can like change it right then and there. And then we'll bring you back the new bylaws. Basically, you're amending the bylaws, then we'll print you new copies that have the new change. Remember, you guys control your bylaws. You set it, the board doesn't, you set it. And, I mean, as long as it abides, whatever you do abides by state law.
Okay,
So.
we'll do it next meeting. No audience members. Do we want to know about what happened in the meeting? Commissioner stuff? No?
That's what I'm trying to, there's so much weird things going on, and frankly, my head is fried.
Okay.
I
We're gonna close
apologize.
Before 10, everybody done?